Hello everyone, it's me, Heather Feather, and today I would like to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Ally. He was a good person with a big heart and an even bigger brain. Ally was happy very often, but sometimes when the world was dark, Ally would feel far away from himself. The ocean would call him, and he'd feel a little lost. Sometimes he'd have trouble finding his way back. Ally's job was to get past walls. All Ally's life, he had to figure out ways around them. Sometimes he'd work hard, chipping away at them until they crumbled. Sometimes he would run right through them. And sometimes he would run really fast and jump over the walls many times just because he could. One day, Ally found a window in a wall. When he looked through it, he saw another world. He tried to climb through the window, but every time he tried, his body got left behind. Ally wasn't afraid, though, and he ventured off to explore. Ally really liked this new world. There were no walls to stop him, and so many new things to see. One of his favorite discoveries were the fields of beautiful flowers that would rustle in the wind. They tickled him, but he liked it. He found that the more beautiful a flower was, the better it felt, and he even picked a few. Some of the flowers could talk to him, and he loved listening to their stories. But Ally couldn't stay. He found that at a certain time, he always had to return back to his body, even if he wanted to stay longer. This didn't make him too sad. He would just return to the window the next day and explore more. One day, when Ally's spirit was roaming the new world, Ally discovered two mountains. He climbed one, and when he got to the top, it was raining. Still, he could see clear across to the other one. On the other one was a girl made of rock. Ally called out to her, and she waved back at him. He asked her if he could talk to her, She said, "From there you can." Because of the rain, Ally was having trouble hearing her. He asked if he could come over to her. She said nope. He asked if she would come to him. She said no. Ally could have left then and went back to his flowers, but he was angry. This world wasn't supposed to have walls, so why did he feel like there was a huge one standing in his way? Every day, Ally came back to the mountain and shouted at the rock girl through the rain. Sometimes he tried to climb her mountain, but each time he did that, she would run down the other side. Ally wasn't used to invisible walls like this. Some days, he'd pound his fists on it. And some days, he'd gingerly tap it and try to find the weak spots. But because it was invisible, he couldn't tell where the cracks were, or where he should apply more or less pressure. Even with the wall in his way, he found he liked shouting across mountains with the rock girl. He asked for her name, and she shouted back, "Scary." Some days they had a lot of fun, and some days they fought. Ally liked pressing her buttons, and Scary liked that he never gave up trying to see her. Ally did not like that she wouldn't bend, and Scary didn't like that he wanted her to change. Even though Scary wouldn't let him near her, the wall breaker and the rock girl became strange friends. They would tell each other stories about each other's worlds, sometimes for hours. And Ally would fight his body not to go back, so he could try to see the sunrise in the far-off distance with her. One day, Ally climbed to his peak and told Scary that he might not be able to visit her anymore, because while he was away in the window world, a huge wall had been erected in his real one, and he needed to fix it. He was going to miss his flowers and his rock companion. She asked him if this was goodbye, and Ally said, "I don't want it to be." Ally didn't come around as often after that. Scary would wait and wait and wait for him. But when he came, he would only stay a short time. And Scary was so sad. She missed her stubborn friend. But when Ally would come to see her, he was even sadder. So Scary didn't talk about how less wonderful her mountain seemed when Ally wasn't there to yell at her from his. One day, Ally came to visit, but Scary saw only half of him was there. "What happened, Ally?" she asked. "I lost myself," Ally answered. "I'll help find you," Scary shouted back. Scary climbed down her mountain and met Ally at the bottom. When he saw her up close, he laughed and said, "You're not scary." She scowled and said, "It's really me. You just haven't seen me this close before." Then she took his hand and said, "Let's go find the rest of you." Ally and Scary walked for a long time. Ally noticed that Scary was equal parts obsidian and sand. Sometimes she was so hard it hurt, and other times she spilled over his hand and slipped through his fingers. "Ally, I've never left my world before," Scary said, but she climbed through the window with him into his. "Do you know where you could be?" "Yes," said Ally. "Sometimes at night, the ocean calls me. I might be there." So Ally and Scary started on their journey. The ground was wide and endless. Ally and Scary were having a hard time getting very far at all. "Climb on me, Scary," Ally said. "I'll turn into a unicorn, and you can ride me." Scary did, and they rode as far as they could until they approached a field of barren soil. It was poisoned. The only way to get across it was to go underground. If they so took a step on the soil or a breath of it, they would be lost forever. "Climb on me, Scary," Ally said. "I'll turn into a scorpion and burrow far under the ground where nothing can touch us." "How can I trust you won't sting me, Ally?" "You have to trust me, Scary. I would never hurt you. You're safe with me." Scary hesitated. Ally held out his hand, and Scary recoiled. Ally kept it there, though, and Scary let him. "Don't sting me, Ally." "You're allowed to be scared, but I won't let your fear be realized. It's not my fear." Scary put herself in his hands, and together they burrowed far underneath the dangers of the world on top. When they emerged, they were at the ocean. The waves beckoned Ally to come in, and Ally couldn't hear Scary shouting at him to resist. The ocean snatched Ally off the beach and carried him far out to sea. "Ally!" Scary ran into the ocean and sank to the bottom. She couldn't move fast enough to keep up with poor Ally, so she burst into sand. The salt water poured through her, and it hurt, but she raced through the waves. The ocean wanted to keep Ally, so it fled, but Scary pursued. Finally, after hundreds and hundreds of days, the Ocean placed Ally down on an island. There, the other half of Ally was waiting. Ally sat with himself, but his eyes were empty. He had been flooded. He was very far away, somewhere inside himself. Scary washed ashore and threw her arms around both allies. The ocean was enraged and decided to do away with both of them. It crashed down on them, but Scary became as heavy as she could and anchored Ally to the island in her arms. Scary held on to Ally until the ocean exhausted itself. When it had stopped trying to wash them away, Scary held Ally's empty face in her hands. In the middle of the vast ocean, on a tiny island, far away from the rest of the world, Scary pleaded, "Ally, this is a cold and lonely place. You shouldn't stay here. I need you. Everybody needs you. No one can break down walls like you can. You have to come home. I'm afraid you won't come back. Don't leave me, okay?" The two allies merged back together. "Okay," he said. When Ally spoke, Scary collapsed. "Oh, Scary." He saw she was hurt, and she couldn't control if she was sand or obsidian anymore. "I think I'm sick. I can't get it together." "I'm here, Scary." "My ally, I don't know if I will be able to return. Pieces of me might get left behind. Even if I make it, I might not be the same. I don't care. You'll always be my friend, and I won't let you go no matter what you are." "I'm frightened, Ally," Scary said, as she started to cry. Ally tried to hold her, but he couldn't get his arms around her as they kept sliding through. His head fell back, and he let out a cry of frustration, and Ally transformed into a giant dragon. He roared at the ocean, and it stilled out of fear. The rock girl and the dragon were on an island surrounded by an endless sea of blue glass. "Can I curl up in your hands, Ally?" Ally flapped his giant wings and scooped up Scary. "I got you," he said. "But for how long?" Scary answered back, afraid she would slip through his fingers. Ally held her tightly and didn't let a single grain out of his grasp. "Always," he said. He soared high into the air, above the world and its lonely ocean, its poison ground, the vast emptiness, and over all the walls. He flew to the window in the wall with all of his might and exploded through it, disintegrating it. But even though he had broken the window, the force that kept his body in his real world was pulling him back, as the wall with the window was rebuilding itself piece by piece. He fought desperately to stay in the air and finally reached the top of Scary's mountain. He gently placed her down and was himself again. "Scary, are you all right now?" "You have to go," Scary said, seeing his colors start to fade. "I'm not ready," Ally answered, despite the pullback to his own world that was increasing every second. Scary looked at him sadly through the rain. "I'm not letting go just yet, though everything is telling me to," Ally said, fighting the pullback to his world. "It's not the way I am made up." Scary shut her eyes and fell asleep to the sound of Ally's voice, promising her that neither of them stop existing, no matter which world they're in, how far away they are, or how old they are. The last thing Scary remembered was Ally kneeling down and saying goodbye. Scary slept for many days, and when she finally woke up, she had no idea how much time had passed. There was something obstructing her view of the mountain that Ally used to shout at her from. It was huge and solid, and it seemed to loom over her. It was a wall. In its center was a window. She peeked through it and couldn't see across to Ally's mountain. "Goodbye, old life," Scary thought. "If a wall is here, that means Ally hadn't been, and who knows if he'll ever be again." Scary looked around at her mountaintop. It was just as empty as she left it, but something was different. What was it? At that moment, a bright blue light filled the space around her. Scary looked to see the window opening, and Ally climbed through. He saw her looking up at him, and he fell down with joy. "You came back," he said, squishing her in a hug. "So did you," she breathed in disbelief. He motioned around them. "Do you like it? You did this?" "Of course," he said proudly. "But Ally, the wall." "Yes, it was here when I came back the next day to see you. So while you slept, instead of breaking it down, I built us a window. Now I can come straight to you from my world, and you can see mine if you want to look, so you'll know I'm with you, even if I'm not with you." And he pointed to the sky. Scary saw what was different about her mountaintop now. Ally had built a roof. No rain was falling on them. "But how, Ally?" Scary asked with wonder. "I am the best at getting around walls or breaking them down, but it turns out I can build windows too. So now we'll never be far apart, even though there are worlds between us." Scary looked all around at what Ally He hadn't left a wall up. He had created a door where there was none. She looked at Ally. I was so afraid I'd lost you. I'll always come back scary. But you'll have to share your mountain with me now. I can't go back to the way things were. Scary smiled at Ally. No, I suppose we can't. So, the boy who tore down walls, built windows to worlds, and turned into all kinds of beasts to get to the top of a mountain in one piece, sat down, and the rock girl who left her world to fight an ocean with grains of sand sat against the wall, out of the rain, surrounded by blue light from a new window on top of a mountain, and waited for the sun to rise to get